Ever since you were a kid, you had it all planned out. You'll go to a big-time program, win a Heisman Trophy, and dominate as a rookie in the National Football League. Oh wait, let's back that up. Maybe you go to a small school, dominate there, and then go on to dominate as a rookie in the National Football League. But it ain't that easy. First, you have to be a standout in college. Then you have to be a standout in the All-Star games. Then there's the Combine, your biggest interview yet. Then there's your personal interview called your Pro Day, and you can't slip up there. So before you even think about getting here, you better make sure you get here. It's a lot more difficult than you originally thought, huh? But there's hope, because if you handled your business here, you'll definitely get a call and a jersey, meet the commissioner, and be well on your way to realizing your dream just like you planned it as a kid.
My philosophy on the NFL draft and its grading process goes like this. Round grades are based upon Football Gameplan's grading system, the same system that we utilize to grade high school prospects. We look at certain attributes in a prospect over 3 games to formulate a grade, and from that point they fall within a certain round. Half of the players we watch don't make the final list, but they do have a grade. And while there's approximately 265 draft slots this year, 335 players earn between a first round and 7th round grade, which tells me this is a very deep draft class, stockpile with very good talent. And just because a player has a 7th round grade doesn't mean he's not highly thought of. We at Football Gameplan don't judge a player by the round he's drafted in, because that's an uncontrollable variable. We look at it from the perspective of, this is a player that we wouldn't mind having on our team. It's like picking players in the schoolyard. The guy with the least amount of holes in his game, the one that had the instant impact type talent, got picked first. And then you just go from there. So we think going into the draft is an opportunity to get 7 impact players on your football team. Not 1 starter and a bunch of backups, because personally, I believe that development stops once you leave college, and there's no development that takes place at the National Football League level or the professional level. It's all about honing your skills. So development is done. So you are what you are at this point in the process. So each and every one of these 335 players that made our big board, we think highly of as some of the best football players in the country. This year's draft class features much more dynamic talent across all of the positions, more so than years previous. And this is evident by the 36 first round grades we've given prospects in this draft class. And let's take a look at the players that have earned first round grades from us, starting with our #1 overall player, quarterback Teddy Bridgewater.
Bridgewater graded out as our top overall prospect this year. The reason why is because of how polished he is as a passer and also as a player. Playing the pivot position, your awareness and football IQ has to be off the charts, and he definitely possesses both of those traits. Not to mention his accuracy when throwing the football is about as good as you'd see from any quarterback prospect coming out of college. He and Andrew Luck, in my opinion, are equally similar as far as throwing the football is concerned. Luck is more athletic than Bridgewater, but both guys are 2 of the most polished prospects in the last 5 years. And here are the other first-round graded prospects in this year's draft class. Gabe Jackson, James Hurst, and Tyler Lawson out of Utah State were 3 of the most impressive offensive line prospects I've scouted this year. All 3 consistently graded out very high and were the best at their position. Carlos Fields out of Division II's Winston-Salem State also graded out very well. And I'll tell you this, if you can take off the jersey and the logo, you'll see an explosive player on both ends of defense that dominated each and every week and is no different than C.J. Mosley out of Alabama. And there's only 2 first-round tight end and running back prospects this year. Austin Safarian-Jenkins out of Washington I like because he's a complete tight end that can block and also be moved around a formation. And Lake Seastrunk out of Baylor because of his explosiveness and his game-breaking ability that reminds me a lot of Napoleon Kaufman that played for the Oakland Raiders.
Football is a game of mismatches, finding ways to outsmart your opponent. One way to have a leg up on a competition is by having threats at every position. And leading off our 2nd round graded players, there's no one that exemplifies both talent and threats to the T more so than tight end Eric Ebron out of North Carolina.
Eric Ebron is our highest graded second round prospect and is one of the best tight ends in the country. And what I like about Ebron's game is that he's a willing blocker. He's not the greatest, but his effort and his 1-2 are there, and that's all you can ask for as a coach. Now, as far as his receiving skills are concerned, he's right where you want him to be. A dynamic playmaker that's dangerous after the catch and should be an instant matchup nightmare for opposing defenses in the NFL. Now here are the rest of the prospects that have earned second round grades, and the defensive line dominate the top half of our rankings with Marcus Smith, Kareem Martin, Justin Ellis, Dominic Easley, and Zach Kerr out of Delaware. But keep an eye on Marcus Smith out of Louisville. He's one of those players that can play outside linebacker in a 3-4 and live in the backfield as a pro. Running back DeAnthony Thomas is instant offense from the running back position and nowhere else on the football field. This is the easiest way to get him the football is to turn around and hand it to him. Size doesn't matter more so than skill does, and if you're good enough, you're big enough, and he definitely has the skill to make it happen. And I love the cornerback talent in this draft, and the number of second round graded prospects exemplify that with 7 cornerbacks that made it in. Pierre Desir out of Lindenwood and Travis Carey out of Ohio are 2 of my favorites. And 2 of the most underrated linebackers in the country is East Carolina's Darrell Johnson and Oklahoma State's Sean Lewis. Johnson is a guy that can play inside backer or an outside backer in the 3-4 defense, and he also is an excellent blitzer, while Lewis does a phenomenal job in coverage and should find a home as a strong side backer at the next level.
John Heisman said there's 5 parts that make up a football player: athletic talent, aggressiveness, mentality, speed, and weight, all of which can be used to describe Florida State's defensive tackle Timmy Jernigan, whose 5 parts equate to him being 100% Seminole badass.
Timmy Jernigan out of Florida State came into Tallahassee as a highly touted high school recruit and did an admirable job in the trenches. He wasn't the dominant force many expected him to be, but he did have dominant moments throughout the course of his career. Now, he's not the pass rusher on the inside that his body type would suggest. He's more of a run defender, and I think he's an ideal one tech and can also play the nose in a 3-4 or an underfront very well. Now let's check out the other guys that I've graded out as third-round prospects, and as you can see, 3 third-round graded quarterbacks in David Fales, Blake Bortles, and Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think Fales has the best chance to succeed because of his quick release and his tremendous accuracy. You also see a boatload of running back prospects here as well. It's a solid but not dynamic crop of backs, but when you look at both Terrence Cobb out of the Cumberlands and Jeremy Hill out of LSU, I see 2 future Pro Bowlers if they're given the opportunity. At 105, you see Ohio State's linebacker Ryan Shazier, who's a tremendous athlete, but an okay football player. He'll excel as a weak side linebacker as your classic run and chase type of a player. The Dixon twins out of Northwest Missouri State, a Division II program, also graded out as third rounders, as they are 2 excellent cornerbacks, as well as safety Jack Morrow out of St. Cloud State, another player with the skill set and the talent that plays way above his level of competition. And there's also very good value at wide receiver this year, and I think Tulane's Ryan Grant is one of the most polished route runners in this year's draft class.
No stone should be left unturned in scouting, and a lot of times the best players can be found in the unlikeliest of places, which is why at Football Game Plan we scout the player and not the school. And we're going to start our 4th round graded prospects off with defensive back Keith Lewis out of UVA Lynchburg.
Keith Lewis is an underrated defensive back that can play both corner and safety. He has the size to match up versus bigger wide receivers and tight ends, with the speed and fluidity to run with the smaller, shifty guys. And with the way the NFL is played now, you need more versatile defenders to be able to compete, and Lewis will be an excellent mid-round prospect that'll greatly improve your pass defense. This is the meat of the draft right here. 52 players earned 4th round grades from us, and there's a couple of guys that have tremendous upside, like Tennessee's defensive tackle Daniel McCullers. He's only in his 6th year of playing football, but has 2 things you can't coach: size and talent. And once he learns technique and pad level, he'll be unstoppable on the inside. Outside linebacker Shaquille Barrett from Colorado State reminds me a lot of James Harrison, a great bull rush type penetrator that's a great run defender. Free safety Dante Johnson out of North Carolina State is a former cornerback that moved to safety, so you know the ball skills are where they need to be. And also A.J. McCarron out of Alabama, who was highly productive throughout the course of his Crimson Tide career. And while he's not flashy, he's steady and dependable, and I think you can win a lot of games with McCarron as your quarterback. And finally, I want you to keep an eye on both Roosevelt Nix out of Kent State and Walt Aikens out of Liberty. Nix is a former defensive end that's moving to linebacker a la Lamar Woodley, and Aikens is a superb athlete that is a little raw with his technique, but talent-wise, he's right where he needs to be and definitely has a bright future at the next level.
You have to really dive into the tape if you want to excel at scouting, and a lot of times in doing so, you're going to begin to discover guys that have versatile talents, like defensive back Elijah Lee out of Charleston Southern. He can play corner or safety. Played at a small school, small in stature, but definitely has big-time game.
I'm a big fan of Elijah Lee's game out of Charleston Southern. The Bucks played him all across the field, and he was able to excel, whether it was on the boundary or in the slot or in a pseudo whip rover type of role. He was able to hold his own. I think the best position would probably be best utilized as a safety, as a pro. Now, Lee's skills, instincts, and versatility are comparable to Florida State's LaMarcus Joyner and Georgia Tech's Jamia Thomas. Linebacker Keaton Sticker is an explosive tackler that also displayed good athleticism and versatility for the Reddies of Henderson State by also playing fullback in short yardage and goal line situations, scoring 14 touchdowns this year. And speaking of scoring touchdowns, running back Tim Cornette was a huge reason for the success of the UNLV Rebels this season. He's a big back with shiftiness. Cornette helped the Rebels reach a bowl game for the first time in 13 years. And I'm a big fan of Nebraska's wide receiver Quincy Enua, who was having a great week down at the East-West Shrine game this year before an injury sidelined him for the rest of the week. He's a big physical receiver with great run after the catch skills that will be a much better pro than he was a collegiate. Nathan Ollie is a very underrated defensive tackle out of Ball State, displaying the quickness off the snap and the strength at the point of attack to play any technique on the inside. And rounding out our 5th round graded prospects is LSU's fullback J.C. Copeland, who plays a lot like Craig Ironhead Hayward and could see time as a situational goal line short yardage back because of his natural running skills and the soft hands he displays catching it out of the backfield.
In the 6th round, we find ourselves in a land that has dense vegetation. Some may call this the jungle, but we know it as Ace W. Mumford Stadium, home to the Southern Jaguars and our 226th rated player, quarterback, Dre Joseph.
I'm a big fan of Dre Joseph's game. Like I mentioned before, here's a guy that can make every throw on a football field. Tremendous touch, accuracy, and leadership skills he displayed while at Southern. He got better each and every year. And if you're a team looking for a quarterback that you want to bring along within your system, Joseph will be around later on in the draft. But this is a guy that has David Garrard-like skills, and I think he's going to have a long career, whether it be in the NFL or the CFL, because he's that talented of a passer. Here's where the good teams get better, by hitting on late round prospects, and as you can see, there are still some big time names that have big time talent, like Aaron Murray out of Georgia, TJ Jones from Notre Dame, Cameron Fleming, the offensive tackle out of Stanford. Some may be surprised to see Clemson's wide receiver Artavis Bryant graded so low, but to me, he's inconsistent in catching the football, and although he's 6'4", 200 pounds, at times he plays a lot like a 5'10" wide receiver. I think he should have went back for another season at Clemson. Wide receiver Austin Franklin out of New Mexico State graded out very well for his ability to sacrifice his body for the catch over the middle of the field, as well as cornerback Quade Cox, who showed confidence and ability at Jackson State to want to match up versus the opponent's number 1 wide receiver. He played a great game versus Tulane's wideout Ryan Grant this year. Tight end Richard Rodgers out of Cal has a lot of upside, reminds me a lot of the Oakland Raiders tight end Michael Rivera, and also defensive tackle Antoine Lewis out of Villanova is an ideal 3 technique that I want to see become a little bit more consistent versus the run.
Now we've reached the final part of our big board, our 7th round graded prospects, and as we've echoed throughout the course of this video, there's guys this far down in the draft that can be starters in the National Football League. So let's begin to finish this video by starting in the backfield with Arizona State's tailback, Marion Grice.
Marion Grice is your classic triple threat type of a player, a guy that can do it as a runner, as a receiver, and also as a returner. Where you want to see him get better at the next level is running with better pad level. I think he leaves a lot of yards on the field because he runs too high. He runs like he's 6'5", and he's only 6 feet tall. We know he can catch the football out of the backfield. You can even line him up as a receiver, and he'll be a matchup problem versus linebackers, safeties, and even some cornerbacks. But again, if he wants to sustain success in the NFL, he's going to have to run with better pad level and become a much better blocker in pass protection. and I have over 60 prospects that ended up with the 7th round grade, more so than any other round. There is some great tight end talent here with Cameron Brate, a former wide receiver that kicked down inside for Harvard, Joe Don Duncan from Dixie State, Trey Burton from Florida, who can play any skill position on the football field. But there's two polarizing players here, and that's Colt Lyola out of Oregon and quarterback Brett Smith out of Wyoming. Lyola had the well-documented off-the-field issues, and you hope he has gotten past his personal demons, while Brett Smith, an early entry player that I think should have went back to Laramie for one more season. He's too raw of a player for me to grade higher, and I look at what new head coach Craig Bohl did for Brock Jensen at North Dakota State. He would have done the same thing for Smith at Wyoming. Running back Dylan Baxter out of Baker, which is an NAIA program, has great versatile talent. And both kicker Cairo Santos out of Tulane and punter Kirby Vanderkamp out of Iowa State were football game plan preseason All-Americans and the only specialists to make the list. Now, to see more detailed breakdowns of all 335 players, check out my prospect rankings video on our website at footballgameplan.com/draft. So there you have it. That's my big board. Now, I hope the one thing you took away from this video is that it doesn't matter where you play, big school or small school, talent is talent no matter where it suits up to showcase it. And the NFL will always somehow, some way find you. You just make sure you hold up your end of the bargain and play well once you get there.